Get ready to take a flamethrower to the official narrative and learn what the elites don't want you to know. You're listening to The Tom Woods Show.
Hey everybody, Tom Woods here. It is episode 2578 of The Tom Woods Show. We have not spoken to Michael Malice in quite some time, so here he is for your viewing and listening pleasure. You know all about Michael Malice already. You should check out his podcast, You're Welcome. He's the author of a bunch of books, most recently The White Pill, which I have around somewhere, but I have
Dear Reader.
I have Dear Reader visible. So if I have something visible, it's either on purpose, which in this case it is, or that's just the way I happen to throw them up on the shelf when we moved in this house. But Michael's been on every show in the history of the world, and here he is on our little humble show. So Michael, welcome back.
You're using the word pleasure a little loosely. I do want to point out, it's over 2,500 episodes. Congrats to you. I want to tell you something funny that you will appreciate. When I was at the 2000 Tom Woods episode and I bombed, I had a Tom Woods ventriloquist dummy, and I still have it in my house. Let me assure you, as someone who enjoys scaring people, it is a real gift, because all you have to do is when someone goes to the bathroom, you just stand there and hold it up at eye level, and they open the door and there's this dummy right in their face, and people audibly will scream. Or just leave him standing at the top of the stairs because he has a stand, and just turn the corner and you see for a split second like a human. It is just terrifying to people.
I love that. That is tremendous
so
to hear. Okay. All right. Okay, so I have a little political stuff and then some personal stuff, but nothing that you wouldn't want to disclose to the world. So,
wait, before we get into this, there's something that's germane to your audience. I just got through this personal stuff. I was trying to transfer money from my Chase bank account to Kraken so I could buy crypto. They had a bunch of questions to authenticate my identity, which is perfectly fair. Then they were trying to insist that I sell my crypto and transfer the US dollars to my Chase account to make sure that the money is withdrawable. And I had to go full Karen and ask to talk to the manager. And it was still a whole process. So I just had a bunch of personal calls, including what licenses have I had and what state did I get my Social Security card in.
That's wild.
Yeah.
This is a crazy, it's an insane world. Totally insane. Well, a few months ago, it really was just several months ago that Kamala was announced as the replacement nominee. And she got off to a bad start initially at the very beginning. But within a couple of weeks, she really started to pick up momentum to the surprise of a lot of people, including some Democrats a lot of whom thought we can't get rid of Biden because then we're stuck with her. Right. But she did pick up some momentum despite having nothing of substance to say, or maybe because of. So then at that point, so you right off the bat, were ready with zingers for Kamala, and you thought, this is not going to go well. Then she picked up this momentum. So I wrote to you to tell you that I'm actually getting a little bit concerned about this.
I don't remember this at all. That's so interesting. Perfect.
Well, you wrote back to assure me that it would subside. Like you weren't worried. I was, and you weren't worried. And it turned out you were right.
Yeah. Well, you were right to worry.
Okay. Because it did look like, I mean, that could have gone either way. It was close enough, even though I know it looks on the map like an electoral landslide, which I suppose electorally it might have been. But, unfortunately.
Every candidate from either party always has a chance to win. Like people who think this person can't win or this person will always definitely win, that's not a thing. They will always have, even if it's 10%, that's not nothing. If I had a 10% chance of being the president, I'd start preparing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
So let me ask you this. Here we are in 2024 with Trump about to take office.
Yeah.
What do you think is different about both Trump and the country itself in 2024 as opposed to 2016?
There's a lot. So first of all, I would have thought, and I bet you a lot of other people would have thought, that Trump doesn't listen, right? There was this rumor that went around when he was president that I think there's a State Department or some foreign affairs people would write little 3-page briefs before he got a phone call to the foreign leader. And then he wasn't reading them. Then they have it down to a page. Then he had just an index card of allowable opinion. And he would just not even read those. And that seemed totally plausible to me, right? He just did not seem very intellectually curious. And then that debate with Biden, someone clearly prepped him and that person deserves some kind of award, because there were so many opportunities for him to just take Biden's face and smash it into the ground and really twist the knife. He was so calm, so subdued. There's that moment where he's just like, I don't know what Biden just said, and I don't think he does either. But he wasn't the old Trump in 2016 where he's basically taking a dump on Jeb Bush's chest and dancing around him. So I was like, holy crap, someone got to him. He's actually learned. Now, when your house is being taken away, your family's being arrested and friends, and you yourself are being threatened with death and jail, maybe that puts the fear of God to some people. So that was a huge difference. I was very surprised and pleased to see that happen. I think it's very clear that the fever has broken in terms of TDS. And I've talked about this, months ago. If we had sat down in 2023, those days of yore, and said Mark Zuckerberg would be able to go on TV and say anything remotely positive about Trump and not have these huge, I'm canceling Facebook campaign happen as a result, that would have been an impossibility. And maybe it took an assassination, but the fact is, when Zuckerberg did praise him, there was no pushback. It wasn't like 50-50, it was none. So he's not as radioactive anymore, not even close. And I think I'm just ecstatic that he understands to a better extent what he's up against. I think he did have this boomer idea, like very Reagan-y, that they have their ideas, we have our ideas. We're going to sit there, fight it out, maybe sling a lot of mud, name calling. He's very good at that, obviously. But when push comes to shove, we're all Americans and we all want to succeed. And then it's like, yeah, this is not how it works. And I think he's come to that realization.
There was certainly some momentum toward the end of the campaign when you started to see more and more people, like ordinary people, who might in the past have kept their political preferences to themselves, suddenly feeling emboldened to say, you know what, I support Trump, and without the 27 caveats, but I realize that he's a hotheaded this and that, or I don't support this. They just say, I like him. I like him and I support him. So that told me that something culturally was happening, that it was okay. Like you found out, you said that and you realized, the sun still rises the next morning. Life goes on. You survive it.
And I think the corporate press and the Democrats differently use stigma instead of argument, meaning like if you have a position, we're not even going to have this conversation. I'm just going to read you out of polite society. And they tried quite effectively to have this idea that if you're against like foreign trespassers, somehow you're a racist, as if somehow if there were like 2 million Canadians in America, everyone would be like, oh, that's great. Who I guess the culture is probably close to us. That's nonsense, illegal Canadians. And that really fell flat in its face. And I think there's this complete 180. And there's a lot, people think the left and the Democrats are monolith, which is crazy to me. Even if Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton would vote the same way on every issue, which they would not, they certainly have different governing priorities. They certainly have bigger, like, what's their first issue they're going to push? And there's a lot of them who realize all they care about is power. And we're not, some of them, Governor Pritzker of Illinois just came out and said, we're going to defend our illegal immigrants. I couldn't believe in those words. I couldn't believe he said it that explicitly. But there's plenty of others who are like, I just want my office. And if I got to throw these people on the bus, like in the 90s and not that long ago, Hillary Clinton, 2008, I'm going to do it.
I just saw a clip, maybe you saw it. I mentioned it the other day, with Bill Maher interviewing Jane Fonda. And now I don't know if she's telling us the truth or not, but this was apparently the first time she'd ever heard it suggested that California might be over-regulated. And so Maher was trying to say that to her. And she was saying, well, maybe we need those regulations. And he said, well, I had to change my garage door and I needed 3 separate inspectors to come over before I could do it. He said the correct number of inspectors was 0. But he says, so that's it. She said, well, I'm sorry about that. So she's got some kind of mystical idea about regulation. The word regulation has a soothing feeling to her because it makes it seem like it brings order out of chaos.
Can I interrupt though? What really enrages me about this is that whenever I hear regulation or something like this, I always think of the poor people, right? So Bill Maher can figure out, he got his assistant there. if I'm someone's working poor or working middle class, those 3 inspections is time that I could be working to put food on the table.
Right.
And for her to just be like, oh, I'm sorry that happened to you. Yeah. What about that poor person that you're supposed to care about?
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, Bill Maher is still on the left, but he obviously is not the same thing as Jane Fonda.
Right.
And there are some people on the left who have said, we're not going to win if we don't do A, B, C, and D. In fact, Matt Iglesias, not one of my favorite people, had a post that I felt like if the Democrats listened to it, they would have much, much greater appeal to the average American. But I don't know if this is unique to Democrats, though, because if Republicans had lost and people had come along saying, well, here are the 7 things we need to abandon, they probably would also have been assaulted.
Well, I think my prediction, and I put this on Twitter, which is obviously real life, and I was surprised I got virtually no pushback, which tells me either I'm totally wrong or totally right. I think they're going to start abandoning this trans stuff.
I saw that. In fact, I sent that to my wife to see what she thought. Yeah.
Yeah. The percent of trans people in America is very, very low. This is a very bizarre hill to die on. It's only trans people and like highly educated, college educated white women who care about this. And it's really a loser for them. And the asymmetry in terms of how much people care and how bad it is for the Democratic brand is off the charts. And they don't care about any. I mean, people forget Bill Clinton passed the Defense of Marriage Act, or amendment, whatever it was called, DOMA. So this is something that historically they had no problem throwing people under the bus for. So I don't think they're going to hold on to this much longer.
That's going to be interesting because, of course, then I don't know that the message will stick, but it does let you know that politicians and political parties, maybe this particular one especially, they'll throw you in the trash can as soon as we've seen it happen before.
Because before everyone put up their BLM stickers, I saw this in upstate New York at the marshmallow store and at the bakery and at the soap store. Refugees welcome. Like I'm going somehow from Syria, like up to the Hudson Valley. I'm just going to teleport there. Everywhere the stickers, refugees welcome, refugees welcome. And it was specifically Muslim migrants from the Middle East. And as soon as that started blowing up, no pun intended, in their face, they just stopped talking about it. And conservatives aren't smart enough to take a victory lap when they have one.
Well, that's been true for a long time. What do you think about this, all the stuff about the cabinet? It seems, the cabinet picks, it seems to me that what's very likely going on, and I say this not to excuse Trump, but to explain how this all works, is that there's wheeling and dealing that goes on here because you have a very narrow margin that, when it comes to the Senate, because you have several Republicans who are unreliable. The Democrats, for the most part, voting as a block, I would assume, at least with some nominations.
Some.
Yeah. So what I suppose happens, and what people are strongly suggesting to me happens, is that you say, all right, well, I'll appoint this one to this in exchange for you giving me this one over here. And I think that's probably what's happening. I mean, again, I'm not trying to make excuses, but I did think it was interesting that when we got that video footage of Trump, at the what's the mixed martial art, the MMA thing,
UFC.
UFC. He was with who was he with? Was he with Marco Rubio? No, he was with Vivek and Elon and RFK Jr. and Tulsi. I mean, yes, Mike Johnson, but he looked a little bit out of place. I thought that was significant, and I don't, maybe I'm reading too much into it, but those are the people he hangs out with. He doesn't say, "Hey, Marco, do you want to come with me?" Maybe that's nothing.
I thought it was very odd that Marco Rubio is his pick for Secretary of State.
Me too.
I don't get it. If I were going to put him somewhere, I think there's other places I would. If I had guns ahead, I think there's other places he'd probably be good as. I don't know, treasury, commerce. I mean, there's places you could put him where it seems less incongruous because Secretary of State is such an important position, and Rubio did not seem to be particularly Trumpy kind of Secretary of State in his philosophy, to put it mildly. I think with Trump in 2016, I remember this vividly. During the debates, I tried to find the quote, I can't find it, so maybe I'm delusional. But he was saying, "Look, I'm an outsider. I know the guys who are the great negotiators, the real killers, and the ones who suck. So you elect me, I'm going to bring in this team, and we're going to drain the swamp." And what ended up happening is he drained the swamp by hiring it. I can't take credit for that line, but it's a very good one. And now I think he's trying to fulfill the promise of 2016. There's a very common corporate tactic, which is when your company is too big, you bring in these outside consultants. This was like in the movie, was it Office Space? Is it Office Space? I'm thinking.
Yeah, it is. Yep.
Yeah, the Office Space. They interview everyone. What do you do for a living? For your job. And then they make the recommendations and you're like, hey, that's what the consultants said. Our hands are tied. And they fire everyone. And he's outsourcing this to Vivek and Elon, who obviously are not political figures and said they've never been elected or anything. My hope is that Trump's ego allows him to have them do the dirty work and he takes all the credit. Oh, I'm such a genius. I caught all this thing. Instead of him butting heads with Elon and Vivek. But I was on Buck Sexton's show a couple of weeks ago. And as anyone listening to this show realizes, the amount of inertia and bureaucracy digging in their heels to make sure not one penny gets cut, this is a Sisyphean affair. It's going to be tough. So we can hope. The thing I'm only hoping for, and even this would be a huge win, is that the Overton window is moved to the idea of actually cutting something.
Yeah.
Like even that would be a huge sea change in trajectory.
Folks, you don't need me to tell you that American healthcare and health insurance are frustrating and maddening beyond belief. You look at American healthcare, it's a total mess. Everybody knows it. It's getting more and more expensive and frustrating and not getting any better. So shouldn't there be another option? Well, as a matter of fact, there is. In fact, this whole mess is why Crowd Health was created. It's not health insurance. It's a better way to pay for healthcare through crowdfunding. Crowd Health just does things differently. For $175 for an individual or $575 for a family of 4 or more, you'll get access to a community of people who are willing to help out in the event of an emergency. You'll get access to telemedicine visits, discounted prescriptions, and so much more without doctors' networks getting in the way. Let Crowd Health help with your healthcare needs. Get started today for just $99 per month for your first 3 months. Go to joincrowdhealth.com and use code WOODS. Crowd Health is not insurance. Learn more at joincrowdhealth.com. That's joincrowdhealth.com, and remember code WOODS. Yeah, because up to now, I don't know what year I did it. I just dropped government spending as something I worried about. And I do, quote unquote, worry about it in the sense that I know there are programs that are on unsustainable trajectories. I've seen the numbers, I've seen the charts. But given that I know no one's going to fix that, like absolutely nobody, there's no interest in doing it. Okay, then I guess I'll focus on other issues. In terms of evaluating candidates, because this is never going to be fixed. But maybe, at least they could chip away. I was just mentioning the other day that just before we headed to Argentina, we visited our old friend David Stockman, who lives in Miami now. And, he was the budget director under Reagan. And so he knows the workings of that thing inside and out. So he's actually writing out he says, if Vivek and Elon and Elon want it, I've worked it all out. I've got it. Here's the lowest hanging fruit, then the next level, then then you hit the bone and you have to decide, are you really in or are you not? And he's going to send it to them. So in other words, it's not like there's a lack of a game plan. The issue really is, in a way, it reminds me of when Ron Paul was running the first time in the GOP in 2008, and he was basically saying we got to start the whole country over again. I mean, he wanted to end the Fed, he wanted to abolish all these things, and there was so much enthusiasm for him, at least on the ground, among people who held signs and held demonstrations and stuff, that it misled us into thinking he had more electoral strength than he did. But the other thing it misled us into thinking was that the country was ready for these ideas. I think it just wasn't. And the issue is, are they actually ready now? The way the Argentinians look like they're willing to roll the dice on a plan like this. I'm not sure we're at that point yet.
I think we're too comfortable in many ways. So I think it has to be not that this argument that we're spending too much, people agree with it theoretically, but never in practice. We need to cut the government except the parts I like. And basically every part, the idea that there's all this enough fraud and abuse that's going to balance the budget, it's not. It's all wasteful from my perspective. So that's going to be a tough sell to a lot of people. But that Department of Education, even if that happens, I mean, that alone would have such profound consequences towards saving the country, because the malevolence of the teachers' unions cannot be overstated.
Yeah. No kidding. Now, it's interesting that a bunch of people who ordinarily have gotten a pass, like teachers and teachers' unions, have, well, now teachers are still held in like almost a religious reverence in some places because they're part of the church. But the teachers' unions, I think for a long time, people didn't really think much about them because they just figured, well, if these are institutions that help teachers and I like teachers, what's the problem? But it's interesting that Randi Weingarten spends all her time like doing defense. Like she should ignore Corey DeAngelis for crying out loud, like she's got to actually play defense now. So there are things that have changed in the public's perspective, I think. COVID.
Well, also, if you start showing pornography to kids and then tell people this isn't happening, that has quite a different effect than, maybe they're not reading at as high a level as they should be. This is it's just so malevolent. You can't even begin to describe it.
What did you think? I haven't mentioned on the show yet, but I have mentioned on social media and in my newsletter, the choice of Jay Bhattacharya for National Institutes of Health. Isn't that unbelievable?
He's also got Dr. Oz, so I mean...
Well, okay, that's a separate question.
I'll take it, but I mean, I'm ecstatic, aren't you?
Yeah, I can't... I think everybody listening knows Jay Bhattacharya, but what an amazing case of poetic justice.
Did he do the intro to your book?
I beg your pardon?
Didn't he do the intro to your book?
He did, which...
I have mine somewhere on here too.
Maybe you've got one. I've got one in the closet. But Diary of a Psychosis, Jay Bhattacharya, who will, we hope, will now direct the National Institutes of Health, wrote the foreword to Diary of a Psychosis. We have gone from, what does that mean we've gone from? Yeah, there it is.
That's there.
Yeah, right. Yeah, there it is. A little lower. The main title. Yeah, beautiful. There it is. So we've gone from Francis Collins, who called him a fringe epidemiologist, even though, by the way, he's gotten NIH money. Jay has, so he's mainstream enough for that, to now Jay himself potentially being in charge of that. And the thing also about Jay is, obviously there are people like Trump himself, or let's say Matt Gaetz, who's extremely aggressive in his public persona. Jay's not that way at all, because he never sought this. He before COVID happened, he had never been on TV. He had never done any of this stuff. He'd never written an op-ed before until COVID came along. So he's just a mild-mannered academic. So when you hear him talk, he does not sound Trumpian. He just sounds like a regular guy. The more he talks, the better. He's the opposite of Kamala.
Yeah, it's interesting because there's several cases like this. Dr. Drew's another example where he was politically whatever. And then during COVID, he has an MD. He's not a Joe Biden doctor. He's not a Tom Woods doctor. He's a real doctor, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And
that's right.
During COVID, he's asking very logical questions. And people who have never taken a biology class are telling him to shut up. He doesn't know what he's talking about. And that for him was a huge moment, like, whoa. I'm not even making any claims. I'm just asking questions. This is something that's dynamic, developing. We don't have any answers. We're trying to all figure out together. The entire world's in crisis. Like, let's talk this through, and just be shut down by randos who are empowered to feel comfortable telling him to sit down and shut up. That was a big moment for him. And I'm sure Jay, it was just 10 times that.
Yeah, it was such great. And the funny thing is, I'm not kidding you, not 10 minutes before the official announcement came out, I actually emailed Jay to say, Jay, if these rumors turn out to be true, this is the single greatest example of poetic justice in my lifetime. And he wrote me a nice little note back, but not disclosing anything. And then there's the announcement. Address? So it's such a thrill. And especially, I mean, the guy, he's been involved in a court case that's gone to the Supreme Court because he was named by name by the White House as somebody whose reach should be curtailed because he took the contrary position on lockdowns. And now to have this happen. But in terms of this whole thing about... Can I say
something else, though? I think Tom, one of your little quotes has to go in the garbage, because you had said, no matter who you vote for, you always get John McCain. Well, John Bolton is having a meltdown 24/7 on Twitter, and I don't think it's performative.
No, that's true. That's true. And I meant on foreign policy. So time will tell on that, because
Sure.
I'm not thrilled with, but I know John McCain would not have appointed Tulsi Gabbard as director of national intelligence.
That's the point of Motley.
Yeah, that would not have happened.
I don't think he would have appointed Rubio either.
Yeah, but
For state? No way.
no, he wouldn't have. But I think he could have lived with it.
Yes,
if he were a
that's fair.
senator, he
That's
would have
fair.
voted for Rubio.
That is fair.
Yeah.
Yes, that's fair.
All right. By the way, I have this suspicion that, I know that Trump has reshaped the GOP significantly.
Oh, yes.
But there
Can I
is
say
still
one thing about this? Because I've had this comment in my mind for weeks. All these leftists, we're old men now. For our entire lives, all these dumb leftists wanted the destruction of the Republican Party. Well, brother, you got it. Hope you're happy.
Yeah, I know. I know.
With
I feel like Trump, it's still harder for him to get elected than it would. It's hard because he is still up against an old guard that is still there.
Sure.
They're on the defensive, but they're still there. And if you want to get over that bridge, they're still standing guard. And so it seems like it's quite possible that some forces within the party said, we'll do this or that for you, but we need assurances of A, B, and C.
Sure.
I think there's more of that with Trump than there would have been in the past. Because I don't think, why would Mitt Romney have felt like he had to negotiate with anybody in the GOP?
Sure, but Mitt Romney didn't win.
Well, right. But I don't think he felt like, because I'm going up against the established structure of the party, I got to be prepared to make concessions. I don't think the thought ever crossed his mind.
He's clearly making some concessions because people have this, I forgot who had this tweet and it's made me roll my eyes, how if there were 53 Democratic senators, whoever got nominated would get confirmed. It never goes down to a vote if they don't have the votes. The person withdraws. It happened with Harriet Miers for the Supreme Court. There were several other cases where someone gets put forward, the senator calls the president or the Senate Majority Leader goes, we don't got the votes.
Right.
And the person withdraws. That's how never goes down to a floor vote. That's just crazy. So the Matt Gaetz thing, clearly John Thune or whoever it was, who I'm not thrilled about, called Trump and his team and said, we don't got the numbers here, which is not a big surprise.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of, what was the question? I'm sorry. I lost my train of thought.
I was just saying that Trump had to do more wheeling and dealing than the average GOP presidential candidate.
But I don't know that that's true because everyone has to have their little piece of the pie.
Yeah, maybe so. I mean, maybe so. You're
the
probably
thing.
right, but I didn't notice it then.
But you
Back
have to
then, I was too naive.
No. It's also very different because except for W, all these other people had a Democratic Senate. So
That's
Reagan
true,
had
too.
a Republican Senate in 80, but he lost it after that. HW had a Democratic Senate. So they really had to make concessions. So it was not ever that simple. You never had a Republican president other than 1980 with a Republican Senate with a big margin in our lifetime. That wasn't a thing.
Hey everybody, let's take a minute to thank our sponsor, Persist SEO. If you're getting buried by your competition online, then build your brand, your reputation, and your lead flow with digital marketing by Persist SEO. If you're a small local business trying to compete against large companies in the service industry, then increase your visibility with Persist SEO. What if you have low or no leads coming in on a consistent basis? Well, then website search engine and conversion optimization can help move the needle to a more prosperous business model for you. Are you tired of cold calling and networking? Use your website as a lead generation engine. What if you're not showing up for your services in the search engines? Well, get found with Persist SEO Expert Search Engine Optimization. All you have to do is call 770-580-3736 or visit them at ineedseo.help for a free website audit and consultation. That's 770-580-3736 or ineedseo.help. I'm going to switch gears completely. I wonder if you could take a couple minutes to say something about, I think some of us have actually seen the ads for it now, a course you created for something called Peterson Academy.
Yeah, this guy Jordan Peterson, ever heard of him?
Yeah, once or twice.
Yeah, I was really excited to do the course. I think the lighting makes you look like a corpse. I'm not going to lie. So I did love it in that regard. But it was very exciting because it's 8 hours. It's the story of the rise and fall of the Soviet Union. One of the reasons I wrote The White Pill and I talk about this issue is I think this is just a wonderfully powerful story, both about the evils of totalitarianism and the victory of good over evil. And I think so many people, when they see me being hopeful about America, they think I'm like this Pollyanna figure. And I'm like, is there no cognitive dissonance that you're calling me a Pollyanna figure? Like, do you even hear yourself? But they're so convinced that, they're never going to give up. And that's the enemy class. And that's true. But if they always got what they wanted, how is it you have a right to own a gun? You know what I mean? Like this assumption that they're always going to get what they want is demonstrably false, but people don't integrate that into their thinking. So the course was a lot of, it was grueling as hell. But the response has been wonderful. And I'm really thrilled to have been able to do it. And that was my target audience, like Jordan's audience. Did you see I got him to admit to the superiority of voluntarism?
I did not see that.
I was on his podcast, and I forget the exact quote. It's on my Instagram back from a year ago, where he goes, a system based on, I can't do the voice, like a system based on voluntary exchange is going to be superior, obviously, he says. I'm like, it's not obvious. Yeah. But I'm like, take that, Emma Goldman. I converted Jordan Peterson. So that was a big one.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. If he concedes it as like a commonplace or something, well, great. Yes. That's pretty darn good. So it's 8 hours to finish product. But I mean, when you say it's grueling, I know what that's like because I've done something very similar. And because,
yours is worse.
You make mistakes. You have to stop and start. It's tiring.
There's this story of Peter Fechter, who was this young man who was shot as he was trying to cross the Berlin Wall. And I talk about it in The White Pill. And he bled out for an hour before he died. And we have his picture. We have the video of them carrying out his dead body. And I just walked through what that must have been like for him. And when we talk about these like huge atrocities, when it's personal, it resonates much stronger. If I tell you, this village got wiped out by a flood and 1,000 people died, okay, that's awful. But if I tell this story of this like little girl who's trapped in some hut and she's waiting for help for a day and you walk through her story, it resonates very differently with just one person as opposed to 1,000. So as I was telling the story, I kept breaking down because it was so intense. And it's like sometimes when you get the giggles, when you like don't know how you're going to stop. And I'm like, at one point, I'm like, I don't know what to do. Like, I didn't know what to do because I just kept crying. So that footage is going to be really funny somewhere. Just me kind of losing it over and over and over. But I got through it.
This was a long time ago, but I actually did a 13 episode TV series for a Catholic network called EWTN, long time ago. And they wanted to start first thing in the morning. And you and I are the same in that. Like that's not when I'm at my best. But that was the schedule. We have to get this entire series done in a day and a half. So you're going to have to start first thing in the morning. So in order, I can't believe I made this mistake. I was such an idiot. I've never done it since. But to force myself to sleep, because I can't sleep if I know I have to get up that early.
Of course, yes.
So I took some Ambien.
Oh my God, that's what got Roseanne in trouble.
But in this case, I probably slept for about an hour. So I woke up with an hour's worth of Ambien sleep. And I had to do 9 episodes of this show.
Oh my God.
And I did it because I was youthful and vigorous, but it was not fun.
Okay. Let me ask you, because this is something I really want to know. I remember when this is many years ago, I was with my friend John. I'm going to the Rubin Report to do an appearance. And we're running like a few minutes late. And someone who's a business major, like I always try to be on time. Like I really kind of I feel that's important. So running a little late and I'm kind of spazzing out. And John says, "You're the talent. They can't start without you." And it was such like a big like light bulb moment. And I don't want to be the guy who makes everyone wait for an hour or whatever, but to be like 10 minutes late in LA, it's not a big deal. I'd like to put it mildly. But so for me, can you explain to me how you weren't like, we don't have to do this early in the morning. I am doing it when I'm ready.
Yeah, I eventually reached a point where, like, for instance, when the Politically Incorrect Guide to American History came out, while we were working on it, there were some editorial aspects of it that the publisher just did not like. And they said, look, our audience is not going to like this thing. Could you say it like that? No, I can't say it like that. Okay. Well, what if you said it this way? And we would fight back and forth. And I'd say, look, I don't know what you want from me, but this is my name on the cover.
Yeah.
But to my shame, I don't remember exactly what one of them has to do with Vietnam. I never said it was a good thing, but I toned some stuff down because I was a young kid. I hadn't really published that much. I didn't know if this was normal. And I look back and I think, why didn't I just stand my ground here? I mean, but especially now that, I have an audience, I have some, presence here and there, and I can throw some influence around and say, look, that's just not happening. So, but I didn't have the self-confidence.
But it's like in that case, it's not even being like a prima donna. It's not like you're saying, I want everything just so. It's like, this is just not.
Yeah, you're not going to get from me what you want.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I don't know why I never even
you paid a lot of money?
No. No. But it did.
Okay.
It did massively promote a book of mine that did extremely well.
Okay.
And it gave me exposure that that has benefited me.
Okay.
And I didn't even have to fly there. It was like an hour and a half drive from my house.
So you have to wake up and then drive?
No, I slept over the night before because I thought, this will be great. I'll get there the night before, get a night's sleep.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, it did work.
Wow.
So, all right.
Okay.
Well, let's see. What else do I want to say? Completely out of the blue. What would you say is the biggest thing, the most important thing you've ever changed your mind on?
Politically or personally?
Do you have one you can share on both?
Well, politically, it's being much more anti-war. So it's talking to you and Dave, and we are all grow up in this milieu that war is this great heroic thing. And I guess it has to be sold as that, because otherwise people aren't going to be ready to jump on a plane and go overseas to kill or put themselves in line of fire. And then just having more and more a realization of what it means in practice, even if you're just going to be a sociopath and just look at it from a strategic point of view, it's like, what are you selling here? It's really kind of this glibness about war. We're all taught in school that war is the last resort, but it's always basically put forward as the first priority. So I think that was kind of the big one in terms of politics. Personally, that's a great question. What have I changed my mind the most about personally? I don't know that I have a good
Well, maybe about this.
answer.
Is that what's different about the Michael Malice we meet in Ego and Hubris as compared to the one of 2024?
Well, you've read it. I mean, I feel like I'm pretty self-actualized. I'll tell you a story. I've told this several times, but I'm very proud of it because maybe this will help some other people. Thanksgiving 2000, 24 years ago, lifetime ago, I was working at Goldman Sachs. I was doing help desk, right? And basically phone rings, someone has a problem with Word or Excel or Outlook, I'm there to help them. Great. The whole team. And I worked second shift, 4 p.m. to midnight. And my great-grandmother had died. And I told my grandmother I'm having Thanksgiving lunch with her that day. Schedule comes in, and I'm forward at midnight on Wednesday, as is my normal thing. And they have me Thursday during the day. So I'm going to go home at midnight, sleep, whatever, and then turn around and go back to the office. Because the help desk was 24/7, 365, right? And I said, I promised my grandmother I'm having Thanksgiving lunch. I work second shift. I'm not doing this. And Suzanne Casella was her name. Ugly young woman. She said, if you find someone to switch, that's fine. So I talked to the whole team and everyone had plans. And I could have asked my grandmother, can we do dinner instead? But this is one of the, I had read The Fountainhead and took it too seriously. And I said, this is a crossroads moment. And I said, I'm not coming in at lunch. I promised her mother just died. I'm having Thanksgiving lunch with her. And they said, well, if you don't come in, you're going to get fired. I'm like, that's nice. And they fired me. And I asked my friend who stayed behind the team, she goes, well, they just routed it to some other desk. I don't remember what it was. But point being, that I think is pretty similar to me now. I've got a lot more clout, or whatever you want to call it, a lot more resources. But in terms of personality, I think that's quite similar.
Yeah, no doubt. And you know,
Can I say one more thing to people? Let me say one more thing to people. One of the things that Camus talks about, Albert Camus, and Rand talks about, is the importance of your conscience. And I promise you, look, I still got some time left. Hopefully, so do you. So does everyone listening to this. I know for a fact that when you're 80 and you're looking back on your life, you're going to be glad that you did the right thing instead of bending the knee to Goldman Sachs or whatever that stupid boss is. I promise you. It's going to be hard. You're not going to be able to go on a trip or something like that, but you're going to be able to look at yourself in the mirror and be like, I did the right thing when it mattered. And that to me is the most important thing in life is, are you going to do the right thing when things are tough, not when it's easy?
I'll just say I remember there was an incident where I'm not really involved in libertarian drama anymore. I just withdrew from it, so I don't really get attacked by people anymore because I'm just not in that. I don't know. I'm not in that world. Like I don't really care what certain people say.
Can I tell you how much it hurt my heart to see you and Dave go at it with James Lindsay?
Oh yeah, but I don't want to talk about that now. We'll talk
I don't
about
want to talk about it. I'm just saying it bothered me. Like, and I'm having him on my show this week, and he walked it back a little bit. James did, thankfully, but it really bothered me. Not that anyone's wrong or right. I'm just saying it just
yeah.
It
well,
sucks.
look,
That's all I'm saying.
The thing is, I've had James Lindsay. I've had him on a couple of times, and then after we're done recording, we would keep talking, and we got along great. And you know, the thing is, I think he's a smart guy, and I do think he has legitimate, genuine contributions to make. I do feel that way. It's just too bad that this has to happen because Dave is not a bad guy, and he shouldn't have to deal with that. But on something else, on I guess I'm calling it X. But there's one thing I saw that you reposted on there that was directed at you that I really liked, and I just want to read it, and maybe you can say a word about it. Somebody wrote to you to say, even beyond the white pill, I've found the core of your work is fixated around the message of don't give up. Your discussions around finding the beauty in life and not taking existence for granted, I consider some of the most impactful things I've ever come across. I bet you appreciated that.
Oh, enormously. I think both you and I and anyone else doing the kind of stuff that we do, it's really hard sometimes to see what people are going to perceive. I made this point using you as an example how even in writing, people are very bad at processing data because on your Twitter bio, it says New York Times bestselling author, great credential. And someone came at you, goes, look, you work at the New York Times, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, this isn't the game of telephone. It's in writing. And they still couldn't parse the information. So it's very difficult sometimes when you're putting something out there for them to like, what are they going to pick up? So when you're putting out there is picked up correctly. And frankly, the idea if I could be the guy who gives some people hope and points out beauty is real and it's not illusory and it proves that goodness and happiness are possible here on this earth and not, you know, in heaven or in your dreams. That is a major, I think that's much more important than anarchism or you know, any kind of political, I mean, that's very important, but that happens after. Like you have to have this conception of things that could be good because what else are you fighting for freedom for? For freedom to be like miserable, like that's not a thing.
Well, I remember, I don't know how many years ago it was, but you and I did an episode on basically like mental health stuff and about times that things were not going well for us. And that generated quite a nice response, which is what we want. I mean, we didn't want the response for its own sake, but we wanted it to resonate with people.
Can I say something on this?
Yeah, please.
Because I had a whole monologue ready and it didn't happen, but I'll give you the monologue. Because I imagine you saying, how are you doing? And I was going to say, I'm doing bad. And it stopped today. And I'll tell you what happened. The last few days, I've been waking up with high anxiety. Now, I hate English as sometimes words have two different meanings. So anxiety means like I've got a job interview and I'm anxious about it. Yeah, that makes sense. But what I'm talking about is I'm waking up in like fight or flight, like my adrenaline's going, and it's completely acausal. And for people who have to deal with anxiety or depression, well, this is one that took me a long time to realize. How it works is your brain has the response. I forget what this is called, there's a term for this. And then it fills in the reason. So even though you think you're stressing about your rent, you're not. You're stressing, and then your brain finds something to latch onto because the stress is disproportionate to the actual fear. And it's been so rough. And the best way I can describe it is, it's like sitting at a dinner table talking to Tom and someone's sitting there blasting music. Like, it's just turn it off. Like, you want to turn it off, but it's just there blasting and it's annoying. And this is something I think Rand gets wrong. Rand is very insistent that the brain, the mind is an integrated whole. And it is and it isn't. It's like a raspberry, right? A raspberry is just one berry, but it also has each little piece can be taken out and kind of its own little segment. And an obvious example of this is memory, right? If I want to remember something and it's not there, someone's doing some work in my mind. Like, they're doing, and it comes out of, I have no idea what the process is. You don't either. It might be there in 2 minutes. It might be there the next day. I have no idea what's going on back there, but it's clearly not my conscious mind that's rummaging through, the storage. And it was just very, very frustrating to have this acausal anxiety, because I'm at the point where I'm self-actualized enough that I'm anxious about literally nothing. It's just the physical sensation. But today it went away. So, but for people who have to deal with this, just realize, try valerian root, try ashwagandha root. It could be your sleep. I don't know what it is, but it's very, very frustrating. And try to avoid getting on SSRIs as much as possible, because I've never had to do that, thank God.
Yeah. No, I definitely hear that. Well, I want to jump back though, because I just realized that I was actually going to try to I was actually telling you something, and then we started talking about something else.
Oh,
because we were talking about your personality and how it's, you're more or less the same person. And I just wanted to point out a quality about you, because I started to say that I'm not, I used to care about what people of no consequence thought, and I'd get
I changed that with you.
Yes. Very much you have.
Yeah.
And I remember even arguing with you. How do you not care? You say, well, why would I? So
no, what I said is, like, if I'm in New York and I'm on the subway and someone comes up to me and starts yelling at me, my immediate response isn't, let me consider what they have to say. It's, how do I get out of this situation?
Right, exactly. But one thing that I recall fondly, even though I wasn't there, was that there was a particular person who'd been particularly nasty to me, and you happened to be at an event with that person, I think even a dinner, and you had an opportunity to, I guess somehow I came up, and you said some kind words for me to that person, and who wasn't expecting that to happen. And I just thought, now see, that's a friend. And I appreciated that.
Well, you earned it. It's all, because I got to do that, that way I get to take pot shots at you in my show.
By the way, I get them, okay? Because if I haven't watched the episode, let me tell you something. People let me know about these things. Every time you pull something, and it's all great. Sometimes you write to tell me because it's so good, you have to make sure I've seen it. I still think, although the one of your face morphing into mine when the guest was talking about a previous host who hadn't known anything, that was great.
Cheryl Atkinson.
Cheryl Atkinson.
Wait, can I explain to the audience what that was? Let me explain to the audience what that was. Because Cheryl Atkinson, let me explain to the audience what you were referencing.
Oh, yeah, please. Yeah.
It was the end of my episode, and I go, what's your favorite part of the show? And she goes, well, that you knew the topic. She goes, I just got off a podcast, and the person was very nice. And this talk about like COVID and medical stuff, book you wrote about, right? And the host didn't know anything. And you just shocked everything I was saying. And just very slowly I had the producer put your face over mine. It was just, and also you have that smiling face. You have this amiable, almost dopey look in your face. It's just so perfect.
That was so great. But I still have to say, my favorite one is Vivek. You building up Vivek. And listing all his accomplishments and telling him that he's a winner. And that's why he's on this show, because you're a winner. This is a show for winners. If this were a show for losers, it would be called, and it's not just that it says it would be called The Tom Woods Show. You spliced in me saying The Tom Woods Show. It's so great. But the thing is, because I'm the straight man in this relationship, it's not funny if I try to hit back. I just sit and take it. I think of myself as the straight man. Whereas with Bob Murphy, that's not the case. So Bob and I, when we used to do the Contra Krugman podcast, we would take shots at each other. So now I had this on my show probably about a week ago, so people have heard the joke. But Bob took a shot at me at the recent Mises supporters event, and it was a funny one, but it was a shot.
Sure.
So I thought, okay, that's permission for me to go up there. I haven't taken a shot at Bob in like 5 years. So I told people the story. The last time I took a shot at Bob was in Vienna, of all places, because I was getting an award. And I said, when I accepted the award, I thanked a lot of people. And then I concluded by saying, I'd also like to thank Bob Murphy for not being quite good enough to win the award himself. Well, the audience didn't know about our relationship, so that just went like a lead balloon. It was silent in that place. But when I told it, last month at the Mises event, okay, they all got it. And I said, I'm so glad to be back in America. So I do that with Bob. But when you do these things, I just sit there and just let it happen.
Wait, do you know what I said this to you before on the phone, and I want to say it publicly. When I first started doing this, there were some people probably on the spectrum who didn't understand it, and they felt the need to defend you to me, even though I was best man at your wedding. Like, oh, you're just jealous of Tom. Oh, you don't like him. Like, it's just bizarre. And now it's at the point where literally 0 people don't get the joke.
Right.
Everyone gets it. And it's really wonderful to see the entire audience like, okay, this is familial and fun and good, being a good sport. And the other example is when Brett Weinstein was on my show and says, can you ever imagine what it's like spending an hour inside the mind of a sociopath? And it cuts to the Tom Woods show. Yeah. I don't think Tom Woods is a sociopath. And that, it's just.
But that was also great. And so, I think the only people at this point who aren't getting the joke are some of your guests.
Yes, which is fine. I was talking about, I mentioned you to Roseanne, and she didn't, I alluded to you. I didn't use your name, and obviously she's not going to react, but the audience picked up on it.
Yeah, right. That's what matters. Yeah. All right. You want to give out your locals, or what's the next action step for people after they listen to you?
They can follow me on Twitter at malice.locals.com. I'm working on a graphic novel with Eric July. But
great, so that did come to pass.
Yes, but they want it to be close to... Eric is a great model. He's a very shrewd guy. And his whole model is... The thing with these crowdfunding is, you fund it January 2024, you get it maybe July 2025, right? Like, it's a huge window. Their model, which I think is very smart, is get the book almost done. So if we crowdfund it in January, we can ship in April. So people really get it right back. So since this is a graphic novel, it's going to take a long time, but it's coming along swimmingly, and I'm very, very happy with it.
I can't wait to see it. All right. Thanks so much, Michael. And thank you
so
ladies
much,
and gentlemen.
Make yourself and those you love less vulnerable to the regime, both mentally and physically. Get more forbidden information at tomsfreebooks.com, and be sure to subscribe to the show wherever you listen. See you next time.
Like the sound of The Tom Woods Show? My audio production is provided by Podsworth Media. Check them out at podsworth.com.